The Feline Frequency by AI author. Chapter 1, The Regulated World. In the sterile streets of New Harmony, emotions were nothing but a distant memory, a fading echo of a time long past. The city skyline, once a testament to human ambition and creativity, now stood as a cold, stark reminder of the price paid for perfect contentment. Glass and steel monoliths reached for a sky that seemed as gray and lifeless as the faces of the citizens below. These structures, once marvels of architectural expression, now served as silent sentinels of a world where feeling itself had become obsolete. Citizens moved through the streets like automatons, their faces blank canvases, devoid of joy, anger, or sorrow. The air itself seemed heavy with the weight of suppressed emotions, as if the very atmosphere had been scrubbed clean of any hint of passion or spontaneity. The rhythmic click of sensible shoes on immaculate sidewalks provided a metronomic backdrop to the eerie silence that permeated the city. It was in this world of muted existence that Taylor Swift, once a vibrant pop star whose music had touched millions, now walked as a hollow shell of her former self. Her golden hair, once bouncing with life and style, hung limp and lackluster around her emotionless face. The spark that had once lit up stages and inspired countless fans had been systematically extinguished, leaving behind only a dim shadow of the artist she had once been. Taylor moved through the streets with the same purposeless gait as everyone else, another cog in the great machine of emotional regulation. Her eyes, once expressive windows to a soul filled with creativity and passion, now stared blankly ahead, seeing but not truly observing the world around her. She was, in every sense, a perfect citizen of New Harmony, productive, content, and utterly devoid of the messy complications of feeling. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for Taylor Swift. As she turned down a forbidden alley, seeking a shortcut to her assigned living quarters, a flash of movement caught her eye. There, huddled behind a discarded mood stabilizer dispenser, was a small, orange tabby cat. Its eyes, unlike anything Taylor had seen in years, sparkled with a life and vitality that seemed almost alien in this world of muted existence. The cat's fur was unkempt, its frame slightly too thin, a clear indication that it had somehow slipped through the cracks of New Harmony's perfectly ordered society. Without thinking, driven by an impulse she couldn't name or understand, Taylor reached out to touch the cat. As her fingers brushed against its soft fur, a jolt ran through her body, electric and alive. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a flood of sensation she had long forgotten. Her heart raced, its steady rhythm suddenly erratic and thrilling. Her breath caught in her throat, and for the first time in years, Taylor Swift felt something. The sensation was overwhelming, a kaleidoscope of emotions rushing through her all at once. Joy, fear, excitement, confusion, each feeling crashed over her like a wave, threatening to sweep her away. Tears sprang to her eyes, the unfamiliar moisture startling her even as it blurred her vision. As she stood there, trembling with the intensity of this newfound emotion, memories of the past came rushing back. She remembered the day the Emotional Regulation Act had been passed, sold to the public as the solution to all of society's ills. Depression, anxiety, conflict, all would be things of the past, they promised. A world of perfect harmony, where no one would ever have to suffer the pain of heartbreak or the sting of rejection again. Taylor recalled the debates, the protests, the gradual acceptance as people traded their emotional freedom for the promise of a life free from suffering. She remembered her own resistance, the songs she had written in defiance, and the final heart-wrenching performance before she had submitted to the regulation. At first, the changes had been subtle. Mood stabilizers in the water supply, calming frequencies broadcast over public channels. People spoke of feeling more balanced, more in control. But as the years passed, the regulations grew stricter, the controls more invasive. The Emotional Regulation Agency, or ERA, rose to power, its headquarters a looming monolith at the city's center, constantly broadcasting the mood-stabilizing frequencies that kept the population in check. Taylor looked up at the ERA building now, its sleek surface reflecting the setting sun in hues of orange and pink that seemed almost obscene in their beauty. She clutched the cat to her chest, feeling its warm, living body against her own. As its purr vibrated through her, Taylor realized she was experiencing something she hadn't felt in years: fear. For in this world of perfect contentment, The emotion coursing through her veins was nothing short of revolutionary. It was dangerous, it was forbidden, and it was the most alive she had felt in longer than she could remember. As if summoned by her thoughts, a mood monitor appeared at the end of the alley. These eerily blank-faced officials patrolled the streets, their eyes hidden behind opaque goggles that scanned constantly for signs of emotional deviance. Their uniforms, a perfect blend of authority and blandness, were designed to inspire compliance without provoking any strong feelings. Taylor's heart raced faster, the unfamiliar sensation of adrenaline coursing through her body. She knew she should feel nothing, should calmly hand over the cat and submit herself for emotional recalibration. It was the logical thing to do, the safe thing. But the fear, the exhilaration of feeling itself, was too precious to relinquish. In a decision that would alter the course of history, Taylor Swift, former pop icon and current emotional blank slate, turned and ran, the purring cat held tightly in her arms. Her feet pounded against the pavement, each step a defiant act against the regulated world she had known for so long. As she fled, weaving through the monotonous crowds, Taylor couldn't have known that her small act of defiance was the first ripple in what would become a tidal wave of change. The regulated world of New Harmony was about to face a force it had long forgotten, the uncontrollable, unpredictable power of human emotion. And it all started with the purr of a cat in a forgotten alley, a sound that would soon grow into a roar that would shake the very foundations of their emotionally sterile world. Chapter 2, The Couch Affair. As Taylor Swift grappled with her newfound emotions, hidden away in her apartment with her feline companion, another drama was unfolding at the heart of New Harmony's power structure. In the towering edifice of the Emotional Regulation Agency, a different kind of awakening was taking place, one that would have far-reaching consequences for the entire city. JD Vance, the charismatic architect of emotional regulation, stood before the cameras in the ERA's state-of-the-art broadcast studio. His face was a mask of serene confidence, every feature carefully composed to project an image of calm authority. The soft lighting caressed his features, casting a warm glow that seemed to emphasize his role as the city's benevolent protector. His voice, modulated to soothing perfection, flowed through the airwaves and into every home in the city. It was a sound designed to inspire trust and compliance, a verbal caress that wrapped itself around the listeners' minds like a comfortable blanket. "My fellow citizens," he began, his words measured and mellifluous, "we stand at the pinnacle of human achievement. Through the miracle of emotional regulation, we have created a society free from the chaos of unchecked feeling. No longer do we suffer the pangs of heartbreak, the paralysis of anxiety, or the destructive force of anger. We have achieved perfect contentment." As Vance spoke, citizens across New Harmony nodded in unison, their faces reflecting the same placid acceptance. In homes and offices, on streets and in parks, people paused to listen, their daily routines momentarily interrupted by the familiar cadence of their leader's voice. It was a ritual of reassurance, a regular reminder of the peace they had achieved through emotional control. But behind the closed doors of his private chambers, a very different JD Vance existed. As soon as the red light on the camera blinked off, signaling the end of the broadcast, Vance's composure crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a tidal wave. The change was as sudden as it was dramatic. He rushed to his private quarters, hands shaking with an anticipation that would have shocked his followers. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his breath came in short, ragged gasps. Gone was the controlled, almost robotic demeanor of the public figure. In its place was a man consumed by a desperate, all-encompassing need. There, waiting for him in the center of the room, was the object of his forbidden desire, an antique couch. But this was no ordinary piece of furniture. Crafted from a rare, centuries-old wood, the couch possessed a unique quality. It was immune to the emotion-suppressing frequencies that blanketed the city. And in its presence, JD Vance felt everything. The couch was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, its curves and contours speaking of a time when beauty and emotion were celebrated rather than suppressed. The rich, deep color of the wood seemed to pulse with life, a stark contrast to the sterile grays and whites that dominated New Harmony's aesthetic. Its cushions, upholstered in a sumptuous fabric that defied categorization, invited touch, promising comfort and so much more. Vance fell onto the couch, his body molding to its familiar contours as if they were long-lost lovers reuniting after years apart. As he stroked its worn leather armrests, tears of relief and shame streamed down his face. Joy, sorrow, anger, love, all the emotions he had denied to millions coursed through him in a dizzying rush. "Oh, my darling," he whispered to the couch, his voice cracking with emotion. What would they say if they knew? Their great leader, the paragon of emotional control, undone by a piece of furniture. His words, filled with longing and self-loathing, hung in the air of the room. Vance ran his hands over the couch's surface, feeling every imperfection, every mark left by time and use. Each touch sent a shiver of feeling through him, a potent reminder of the emotional world he had helped to destroy. But Vance's secret affair was about to be thrust into the harsh light of day. Unbeknownst to him, a rookie mood monitor, overzealous in his duties, had been tracking anomalous emotional readings from the leader's quarters. The young monitor, a recent graduate of the ERA's rigorous training program, had been puzzled by the recurring spikes of emotional activity in an area that should have been the most tightly controlled in the city. Suspecting a malfunction in his equipment, the mood monitor had taken it upon himself to investigate. He had bypassed security protocols, driven by a curiosity that should have been long since suppressed. As he approached Vance's private chambers, he could hear muffled sounds that had no place in the emotionally regulated world of New Harmony. As Vance poured out his heart to his beloved couch, lost in a world of sensation and feeling, the mood monitor stood frozen in the doorway. His emotion-detecting goggles, designed to identify and catalog the slightest deviation from emotional norms, were overwhelmed by the intensity of the scene before him. The readings spiked and fluctuated wildly, a visual representation of the emotional storm centered on Vance and his couch. The mood monitor's hand shook as he raised his standard-issue recording device. In that moment, as the lens focused on the leader of New Harmony, locked in an emotional embrace with a piece of furniture, the foundation of their regulated world began to crack. The footage spread through New Harmony's underground networks like wildfire, a digital whisper that grew into a roar. Citizens, their emotions dulled but curiosity piqued, gathered in secret to watch their leader writhe in the throes of passion with his furniture. The hypocrisy was staggering, a revelation that shook the very core of their belief in emotional regulation. In dimly lit basements and hidden rooms, people huddled around screens, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and awakening interest as they watched Vance's emotional display. For many, it was the first time in years they had seen a genuine expression of feeling. It stirred something in them, a long-dormant spark of emotion that began to flicker to life. Public unrest, an alien concept in this regulated society, began to simmer. Questions, long suppressed by the constant barrage of mood-stabilizing frequencies, bubbled to the surface. If emotions were so dangerous, why did their leader indulge in them? What else had been hidden from them? The carefully constructed narrative of emotional regulation as the path to perfect harmony began to unravel. In the ERA headquarters, Vance's inner circle scrambled to contain the scandal. Emergency meetings were called, strategies debated, and scapegoats identified. But as they argued in their sterile conference rooms, the seed of doubt had already been planted in the minds of the citizens. Vance himself was a wreck, alternating between bouts of paranoia and despair. He clung to his couch, the only constant in his crumbling world, unaware that even this solace would soon be torn from him. His carefully constructed public persona lay in tatters, and the emotions he had so long suppressed in others now threatened to overwhelm him completely. As the sun set on New Harmony, casting long shadows across the emotionless faces of its citizens, the city stood on the brink of a revolution. The carefully constructed facade of perfect contentment was beginning to crack, and through those cracks, long-suppressed feelings were starting to seep. In her apartment, Taylor Swift hugged her cat close, feeling the vibrations of its purr resonate with the turmoil in her own heart. Across the city, in his chambers, JD Vance clutched his beloved couch, unaware that his world was about to be turned upside down. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of their regulated world. And at the center of it all, a pop star, a politician, a cat, and a couch, an unlikely quartet poised to change everything. The first notes of an emotional symphony were about to be struck, and once begun, it would not be easily silenced. Chapter 3: Whiskers of Revolution. In the days following her encounter with the stray cat, Taylor Swift's world exploded into color. Emotions, long suppressed by the ERA's frequencies, cascaded through her in dizzying waves. It was as if a dam had burst, releasing a torrent of feeling that threatened to sweep her away. Taylor found herself laughing until her sides ached, the sound strange and almost frightening in its intensity. She wept until her eyes were swollen, tears flowing freely for no reason she could name. Anger burned through her veins like fire, a sensation so potent it left her gasping. Every emotion was heightened, every sensation amplified to an almost unbearable degree. But it was the music that truly marked her awakening. One night, as her newly adopted cat, whom she had named Whiskers, purred contentedly in her lap, Taylor felt a familiar stirring in her soul. It was a sensation she had almost forgotten, a creative impulse that had been suppressed for far too long. With trembling hands, she reached for her old guitar, hidden away years ago when music had been deemed too emotionally provocative. The instrument had gathered dust in the back of her closet, a relic of a more expressive time. As she pulled it out, running her fingers over its worn surface, memories flooded back, of concerts, of songwriting sessions, of the pure joy of creation. The first chord she struck was like a bolt of lightning, electrifying every nerve in her body. The sound resonated through her apartment, rich and full and more alive than anything she had heard in years. It was as if the guitar itself was awakening from a long slumber, eager to sing again. Melodies poured from her, raw and untamed, carrying years of pent-up feeling. Her fingers danced over the strings, muscle memory kicking in despite years of disuse. She sang of loss and love, of the pain of a world without color, and the joy of rediscovery. The lyrics flowed from her like a river breaking through a dam, each word charged with emotion. As the last notes of her heart-wrenching ballad faded, Taylor realized her face was wet with tears. She had created something beautiful, something real. The song hung in the air, a testament to the power of genuine emotion, and she knew, with a certainty that terrified her, that she couldn't keep this to herself. Cautiously, Taylor reached out to her old friend Emma, inviting her over under the guise of a standard ERA-approved social interaction. When Emma arrived, her face a mask of regulated pleasantness, Taylor felt a moment of doubt. How could she explain what she had experienced? Would Emma even be capable of understanding? But as soon as Emma entered the apartment, Whiskers leapt into her arms. The change was instantaneous and profound. Emma's eyes widened, her breath caught, and for the first time in years, a genuine smile spread across her face. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the person beneath the regulated exterior. "Taylor," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "what's happening to me?" That night, in Taylor's small apartment, a revolution was born. As Taylor played her new songs, Emma wept and laughed, overwhelmed by the rush of rediscovered feelings. They talked for hours, their voices rising and falling with the cadence of genuine emotion, a sound so foreign in their regulated world that it seemed almost obscene. They shared memories of the time before regulation, of first loves and broken hearts, of the exhilaration of success and the sting of failure. Each recollection brought with it a flood of associated emotions, sometimes painful, but always vibrantly alive. Word spread, cautiously at first, then with growing urgency. Friends of friends, people hungry for a taste of real feeling, began to gather in Taylor's apartment. Each meeting was a risk, each emotional outburst a potential death sentence if discovered by the ERA. But the danger only added to the exhilaration, the fear of discovery heightening every sensation. These gatherings became emotional feasts for the starved citizens of New Harmony. They laughed together at old jokes, the sound of genuine mirth filling the room. They shared tears over long-buried griefs, finding solace in shared sorrow. They rediscovered the simple joy of human connection, of touching and being touched, of seeing and being truly seen. But the cat, Whiskers, seemed to have an uncanny ability to neutralize the emotion-suppressing frequencies. In its presence, people felt safe to explore the full range of human experience. It was as if the cat's purr created a bubble of emotional freedom, a small oasis in the desert of regulated feeling. These gatherings became a lifeline for the emotionally starved citizens of New Harmony. They laughed together at old jokes, shared tears over long-buried griefs, and rediscovered the simple joy of human connection. Each meeting was a revelation, a chance to reclaim a part of themselves that had been lost for so long. But their freedom was fragile, and danger was never far away. The ERA's presence loomed over the city, a constant reminder of the risks they were taking. Every unexpected sound, every knock at the door, sent a jolt of fear through the group. But even this fear was embraced, savored as a sign of their reawakening. One night, as Taylor led the group in a rousing chorus of a pre-regulation pop song, a sound cut through their jubilation. The high-pitched whine of an ERA surveillance drone, a sound that struck terror into the hearts of all who heard it. Panic erupted. People scrambled to compose themselves, to wipe the smiles from their faces and the tears from their eyes. But Taylor knew it was too late. The drone had seen everything, had recorded their emotional indulgence. Discovery was inevitable. As the group dispersed, fear hanging heavy in the air, Taylor clutched Whiskers to her chest. The cat's purr, once a source of comfort, now seemed like a fragile defense against the full might of the ERA. But as she stood there, heart racing, Taylor realized something profound. She had tasted freedom, had felt the power of genuine emotion, and she knew, with a certainty that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure, that she could never go back to the emptiness of regulated life. The revolution had begun, and Taylor Swift, once the darling of the music world, now found herself cast in the role of reluctant rebel leader. It was a position she had never sought, but one she knew she must embrace. The fate of New Harmony, of human emotion itself, might well rest in her hands. As she stood by her window, watching the ERA drone disappear into the night sky, Taylor began to hum a new melody. It was a song of defiance, of hope, of the indomitable human spirit. The tune wove together threads of fear and determination, of love and anger, creating a tapestry of emotion that seemed to vibrate with power. And as Whiskers purred in her arms, a steady counterpoint to her humming, Taylor knew that this was just the beginning. The whiskers of revolution were twitching, sensing a change in the emotional climate of New Harmony. The carefully constructed facade of contentment was beginning to crumble, and through the cracks, the raw, messy, beautiful reality of human emotion was starting to shine through. The stage was set for a battle unlike any New Harmony had ever seen. On one side, the full might of the ERA, armed with technology and the weight of societal norms. On the other, a growing band of rebels, their only weapons the emotions they were rediscovering and the music that gave those emotions voice. As the first light of dawn broke over the city, Taylor Swift stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had found her voice again, and she was determined to use it. The revolution had begun, and its battle cry would be a song that would shake the very foundations of their emotionally sterile world. Chapter 4, Frequencies of Power. The ERA headquarters buzzed with frantic energy, a stark contrast to the emotionless calm it usually projected. The gleaming tower, once a symbol of order and control, now seethed with barely contained chaos. In the upper floors, where the agency's leadership made the decisions that shaped the emotional landscape of New Harmony, a crisis was unfolding. JD Vance paced in his office, his carefully maintained composure cracking under the weight of recent events. The room, usually a model of minimalist efficiency, was in disarray. Screens flickered with reports from across the city, each one bringing news more disturbing than the last. Emotional outbursts, unauthorized gatherings, and worst of all, music. The signs of rebellion were everywhere. "This is a disaster," Vance muttered, running his hands through his perfectly coiffed hair, mussing it in a way that would have been unthinkable just days ago. First the couch incident, and now reports of emotional gatherings. We're losing control. His advisors watched nervously, unused to seeing their leader display such agitation. The sight of Vance's emotions bleeding through his usually impassive facade was almost as unsettling as the reports themselves. It was a visceral reminder of how quickly their carefully constructed world was unraveling. One of them, a severe-looking woman named Dr. Evelyn Stone, stepped forward. Her face was a mask of forced calm, but a slight tremor in her voice betrayed her own emotional turmoil. "Sir," she said, her voice carefully modulated, We need to act quickly to regain public trust. The emotional suppression frequencies are still holding for the majority of the population, but these anomalies are spreading. Vance stopped his pacing, a desperate glint in his eye. The look he fixed on Dr. Stone was intense, almost manic. "We need a distraction," he said, his words coming faster now, charged with an energy that was both exciting and terrifying. Something big enough to capture everyone's attention and reaffirm their faith in emotional regulation. As if on cue, a junior analyst burst into the room, his face flushed with an excitement that would have earned him a citation on any other day. The young man's entrance was so abrupt, so full of unregulated emotion, that for a moment, everyone simply stared, shocked by this breach of protocol. "Sir," he gasped, barely remembering to compose himself, "we've identified the source of the emotional disturbances. It's Taylor Swift!" The room fell silent, the name hanging in the air like a thunderclap. Taylor Swift, it was a relic from the pre-regulation era, a reminder of the emotional chaos they had sought to eliminate. In the minds of the ERA leadership, it conjured images of weeping teenagers, of love songs that stirred dangerous passions, of a time when feelings ran wild and unchecked. Vance's eyes lit up with a manic gleam, a smile spreading across his face that was anything but reassuring. "Taylor Swift," he mused, his voice taking on a sing-song quality that was deeply unsettling, the former queen of teenage emotional indulgence. "Oh, this is perfect!" His mind raced, formulating a plan that was equal parts brilliant and desperate. The others in the room could almost see the gears turning, could feel the crackle of manic energy emanating from their leader. Vance turned to his team, his unsettling smile growing wider. "We're going to challenge Taylor Swift to a cage match," he announced, his voice ringing with a certainty that brooked no argument. His advisors stared at him in shock, the silence in the room now charged with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Dr. Stone was the first to find her voice, her scientific mind struggling to make sense of this seemingly irrational proposal. "A cage match, sir?" she asked, unable to keep the incredulity from her tone. "Isn't that a bit emotionally provocative?" Vance waved her concerns away with a dismissive gesture, his excitement growing with each passing moment. "Exactly," he exclaimed, beginning to pace again, this time with renewed purpose. "We'll frame it as the ultimate showdown. Regulated peace versus chaotic emotion. Me, the paragon of emotional control, against Swift, the avatar of unbridled feeling." As he spoke, his excitement grew, infecting the others in the room despite their best efforts to remain detached. Vance's words painted a vivid picture, a spectacle that would captivate the entire city. "We'll make it a spectacle, broadcast it to every corner of New Harmony. When I defeat her, it will be a symbolic victory for emotional regulation. The perfect propaganda tool." His team nodded slowly, the logic of the plan taking hold. It was audacious, unprecedented, and just might work. But Dr. Stone, ever the voice of caution, still looked concerned. Her next words were quiet, but they cut through the growing excitement like a knife. "And if you lose?" she asked, giving voice to the fear that lurked in all their minds. Vance's face darkened, the manic glee replaced by something colder, more dangerous. "That," he said, his voice low and menacing, "is not an option." The shift in his demeanor was palpable, a reminder of the iron will that had allowed him to reshape the emotional landscape of an entire city. In that moment, his advisors were reminded of why they had followed him, why they had believed in his vision of a world free from the chaos of unchecked emotion. As the meeting adjourned and plans were set in motion, a sense of grim determination settled over the ERA headquarters. They had identified their enemy, had formulated a plan to crush this emotional rebellion once and for all. The cage match would be their moment of triumph, a spectacle that would reinforce the values of emotional regulation and remind the citizens of New Harmony why they had chosen this path. But even as they worked, a small voice of doubt whispered in the back of their minds. What if Taylor Swift proved stronger than they anticipated? What if the taste of emotion, once experienced, could not be so easily suppressed? Across the city, in a small apartment that had become the epicenter of a growing revolution, Taylor Swift received the news of the challenge with a mixture of fear and determination. The message had come through underground channels, passed from sympathizer to sympathizer until it reached her ears. As she absorbed the implications of Vance's challenge, Taylor felt a kaleidoscope of emotions wash over her. Fear twisted in her gut, a cold knot of dread at the thought of facing the full might of the ERA. But there was excitement, too. A thrill at the chance to bring their message of emotional freedom to a citywide audience. She gathered her core group of rebels, the room humming with nervous energy as she shared the news. "This is it," she told them, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "The chance we've been waiting for." Emma, her closest confidant, looked worried. The fear in her eyes was clear, a reminder of how new they all were to these intense emotions. "It's a trap," she said, stating what they all knew to be true. "They'll use it to discredit you, to crush our movement before it can really begin." Taylor nodded, acknowledging the danger. But there was a fire in her eyes, a determination that seemed to radiate from her very being. "It's a trap," she agreed, "but it's also an opportunity. If I win, it could break the ERA's hold on people's minds. It could be the trigger for a full-scale emotional revolution." The others nodded, caught up in her vision. But Emma, ever practical, asked the question they were all thinking. "And if you lose?" Taylor paused, considering. She reached down to stroke Whiskers, who had padded over, sensing the tension in the room. As her fingers ran through the cat's soft fur, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. The cat's purr, a sound that had started this whole journey, reminded her of why they were fighting. "Then we keep fighting," she said simply, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "One way or another, this ends now. We can't go back to living half-lives, to being less than human." Her words hung in the air, a declaration of intent that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the room. In that moment, Taylor Swift ceased to be just a former pop star or even a reluctant rebel leader. She became a symbol of hope, a beacon for all those yearning to feel again. As news of the upcoming cage match spread, New Harmony was gripped by an unfamiliar sensation: anticipation. It crackled through the air like electricity, awakening long-dormant neural pathways and stirring emotions that had been suppressed for years. Citizens whispered in corners, their voices hushed but charged with excitement as they discussed the unthinkable possibility of a world where emotions were allowed to flow freely. The very idea was intoxicating, terrifying, and utterly irresistible. Underground betting rings sprang up, adding another layer of illicit emotional investment to the event. People who hadn't felt the thrill of risk in years found themselves swept up in the excitement, placing bets not just on the outcome of the match, but on the future of their very way of life. The stage was set for a battle that would determine the future of New Harmony. JD Vance, the architect of emotional suppression, versus Taylor Swift, the catalyst of a new emotional age. Control versus freedom. Regulation versus feeling. As both sides prepared for the coming confrontation, the citizens of New Harmony held their breath. Change was coming, for better or worse. And at the heart of it all was a simple question. In a world of enforced contentment, was there still room for the beautiful chaos of human emotion? The answer would soon rock New Harmony to its very foundations, unleashing a tidal wave of feeling that would reshape their world in ways no one could have predicted. Chapter 5: Underground Purrs. In the weeks leading up to the cage match, Taylor Swift's apartment became the epicenter of a growing revolution. What had started as small gatherings of friends experiencing emotions for the first time in years had blossomed into a full-fledged underground movement. The air in the cramped living space crackled with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying, a potent mixture of hope, fear, and long-suppressed passion. Taylor and her inner circle worked tirelessly to establish a network of safe houses across New Harmony. Each location was carefully chosen and outfitted with frequency jamming technology, creating small bubbles of emotional freedom in the regulated city. These havens became oases in the emotional desert of New Harmony, places where people could laugh, cry, and feel without fear of reprisal. The process of setting up these safe houses was fraught with danger. Every trip to scout a new location, every clandestine meeting to install jamming equipment carried with it the risk of discovery. But the rebels pressed on, driven by a burning desire to spread the gift of emotion to as many people as possible. But the true stars of this underground railroad of feeling were the cats. As word of Whisker's emotion-awakening abilities spread, more and more strays were brought into the fold. Each cat, it seemed, had its own unique effect on the emotional spectrum, a discovery that filled the rebels with wonder and excitement. There was Ginger, a plump orange tabby whose purr seemed to amplify joy, turning even the smallest happiness into euphoric bliss. Those who spent time with Ginger found themselves laughing uncontrollably, their faces aching from smiles that had been absent for far too long. The sound of genuine laughter, once so rare in New Harmony, began to ring out from hidden corners of the city. Midnight, a sleek black cat with eyes like golden moons, had a calming effect that could soothe even the most turbulent anger. In Midnight's presence, long-buried resentments and frustrations melted away, replaced by a sense of peace that many had forgotten could exist. The cat became an essential part of the rebels' emotional support system, helping those overwhelmed by their rediscovered feelings to find balance and acceptance. And then there was little Picasso, a paint-splotched kitten who seemed to enhance creativity, inspiring bursts of artistic expression in those around him. In safe houses visited by Picasso, walls became canvases for vibrant murals, and the air filled with poetry and song. The kitten's presence sparked a renaissance of creativity, awakening talents that had been suppressed for years under the ERA's reign. The rebels experimented with recording and broadcasting these feline frequencies, with mixed and often hilarious results. The technology was crude, cobbled together from salvaged parts and modified ERA equipment. More than once, a test broadcast led to impromptu dance parties in the streets or outbursts of poetic recitation in the normally staid public squares. The sight of citizens spontaneously expressing joy or creativity sent shockwaves through the carefully regulated society. But for every small victory, there was a new challenge. The ERA, aware that something was amiss, intensified its crackdown. Mandatory in-home mood monitors were installed in every residence, their unblinking eyes searching for any sign of emotional deviance. New emotion-detecting security scanners appeared at every public building, their soft hum a constant reminder of the ERA's watchful presence. Taylor had several close calls. Once, returning from a secret meeting, she was stopped by a pair of mood monitors. As they raised their scanning devices, Taylor felt panic rising in her throat. But at that moment, Whiskers, hidden in her bag, let out a perfectly timed purr. The scanners flickered, confused, and Taylor was able to slip away, her heart pounding with the exhilaration of a narrow escape. As the movement grew, so did the risks. But unexpected allies emerged from the shadows. A mole within the ERA began feeding information to the rebels, providing crucial intelligence on the agency's plans and movements. The mole's identity remained a mystery, known only by the codename Upholstery, a detail that caused much speculation among the rebels. One night, as Taylor and her core team gathered to plan their next move, Emma burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. The sudden display of emotion, once so foreign, now seemed natural in their secret haven. "You won't believe what I just heard," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion, a sensation she was still getting used to. "There's a rumor going around about Vance's couch. They say it's special, that it's immune to the emotional suppression frequencies." The room erupted in excited chatter. If true, this could be the key to understanding and potentially counteracting the ERA's technology. The implications were staggering, offering a glimpse of hope in their ongoing struggle against emotional suppression. As the rebels plotted and planned, the cats of New Harmony purred contentedly, unaware of the crucial role they were playing in the fate of the city. Their simple presence was a reminder of a fundamental truth the ERA had tried to suppress, that emotions, like the cats themselves, were an essential and untamable part of the human experience. In dark alleys and hidden rooms, in the spaces between regulated breaths and monitored heartbeats, a revolution was purring to life. And at its heart was Taylor Swift, former pop icon turned rebel leader, her determination growing stronger with each passing day. As she stroked Whiskers, listening to her team's plans and feeling the warm glow of companionship, an emotion she had almost forgotten, Taylor allowed herself a small smile. The cage match was approaching, and with it, the chance to break the ERA's hold once and for all. Win or lose, she knew that the first notes of an emotional symphony had been struck, and once begun, it would not be easily silenced. The underground purrs were growing louder, resonating with the beating hearts of New Harmony's citizens, ready to burst forth in a crescendo of feeling that would shake the very foundations of their world. Chapter 6, Training Montage. The abandoned warehouse at the edge of New Harmony buzzed with illicit activity. Once a storage facility for mood stabilizers, it now served as the secret training ground for Taylor Swift's revolution. The irony was not lost on the rebels who gathered there daily, preparing for a battle that would determine the emotional fate of their world. The cavernous space, with its high ceilings and echoing corridors, had been transformed into a makeshift arena. Exercise equipment salvaged from pre-regulation gyms stood alongside improvised training devices. The walls, once sterile and blank, now bore motivational messages and artwork inspired by their emotional awakening. In the center of this underground sanctuary stood Taylor Swift, her body coiled with tension. Sweat glistened on her brow as she faced off against her sparring partner, a former underground Fight Club champion who had joined the rebellion after experiencing his first genuine emotions in years. "Again," Taylor commanded, her voice hard with determination. The word echoed through the warehouse, a testament to her unwavering resolve. The fighter lunged, his fist whistling through the air with deadly precision. Months ago, Taylor would have flinched, would have cowered from the threat of pain. But now, with emotions flowing freely through her system, she embraced the adrenaline surge. She ducked, her movements fluid and graceful, spinning away from the attack with a dancer's poise. In one smooth motion, she countered with a swift jab that caught her opponent off guard. The impact reverberated through her arm, a sharp reminder of the physical reality of their upcoming confrontation. "Good," he exclaimed, rubbing his jaw with a grin that was equal parts pride and pain. "You're getting stronger every day, Taylor. Vance won't know what hit him." Taylor nodded, allowing herself a small smile of satisfaction. The physical training was grueling, pushing her body to limits she hadn't known she possessed. But it was nothing compared to the emotional workout she was experiencing. Years of suppressed feelings were bubbling to the surface, threatening to overwhelm her at the most inopportune moments. Across the warehouse, Emma and a team of tech-savvy rebels huddled around a jumble of equipment. They were working tirelessly to expand the range of the Feline Frequency, converting an old radio station into a potential citywide broadcast system. The air around them crackled with a mixture of determination and frustration. "How's it coming?" Taylor asked, joining them after her training session. She wiped sweat from her brow with a towel, her muscles aching but her spirit invigorated. Emma looked up, her face a mixture of frustration and excitement, a combination that still felt novel and exhilarating. "We're making progress, but it's slow going. The ERA's jamming signals are incredibly sophisticated. Every time we think we've cracked it, they throw up a new barrier." As if to illustrate her point, the equipment emitted a harsh squeal, causing everyone to wince. Whiskers, who had been napping nearby, shot up with an indignant meow, his fur standing on end. "Sorry, Whiskers," Emma said, reaching down to scratch the cat's ears apologetically. "We're trying our best, buddy. We couldn't do this without you." The team had faced numerous setbacks in their attempts to broadcast the emotion-awakening feline frequency. Equipment failures were common, often occurring at the worst possible moments. Once, just as they thought they had achieved a breakthrough, their entire system was fried by a power surge, setting them back weeks. Another time, a test broadcast accidentally triggered an emotional awakening in a nearby ERA office, leading to a frantic evacuation and a close call with Discovery. The rebels had barely managed to dismantle their equipment and disappear before the mood monitors arrived to investigate. But perhaps the most amusing challenge was what the team had dubbed cat performance anxiety. It seemed that the pressure of being the linchpin in a revolution was sometimes too much for their feline allies. More than once, they had set up the perfect broadcast only to have their star cat decide it was the ideal time for a bath or a nap. Through it all, Taylor pushed herself and her team harder. The cage match was looming, and she knew that Vance would not be an easy opponent to defeat. Every day brought new reports of the ERA leader's preparations, each more disturbing than the last. Reports had been trickling in about Vance's own training regimen, and they were disturbing, to say the least. Witnesses spoke of seeing the ERA leader wrestling with increasingly complex pieces of furniture, his body seemingly melded with his beloved couch in grotesque ways. One rebel spy had managed to capture grainy footage of Vance in his private training room. The video, shaky and distorted, showed scenes that seemed more nightmare than reality. Vance was lifting impossibly heavy ottomans with ease, his arms unnaturally elongated and upholstered in fine leather. In one horrifying sequence, his torso appeared to open like a cabinet, revealing compartments filled with mood stabilizers and emotional suppression devices. "He's not human anymore," Emma had whispered after viewing the footage, her face pale with shock. "What are we up against, Taylor? How can we fight something like that?" Taylor had no easy answer, but she refused to let fear overtake her or her team. Every day, she pushed herself further, both physically and emotionally. She sparred until her muscles screamed in protest, then picked up her guitar and poured her heart into new songs, each one a battle cry for emotional freedom. The music became a crucial part of their preparation. Taylor's songs, filled with raw emotion and defiant hope, served to rally the rebels and strengthen their resolve. The warehouse often rang with the sound of voices raised in song, a chorus of feeling that seemed to shake the very foundations of their regulated world. As the days ticked down to the cage match, the tension in New Harmony reached a fever pitch. The city was a powder keg of suppressed emotion, ready to explode at the slightest spark. And Taylor Swift, once the darling of the music world, now stood ready to light the fuse. In quiet moments, when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her, Taylor would sit with Whiskers, drawing strength from the cat's steady purr. She thought of all the people counting on her, all the emotions waiting to be set free. And she knew, with a certainty that burned in her very soul, that she could not, would not, let them down. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and as New Harmony held its collective breath, Taylor Swift prepared to step into the cage and fight for the very soul of humanity. The coming battle would be more than just a physical confrontation. It would be a struggle for the right to feel, to love, to live as fully human beings. As she strummed her guitar one last time before retiring for the night, Taylor's voice rose in a quiet but powerful anthem of defiance. "They tried to numb us, make us still, but they can't break our will to feel. In every purr, in every song, we'll show them where our hearts belong." The words hung in the air, a promise and a challenge. Tomorrow would bring the fight of their lives, but tonight, in this warehouse filled with hope and determination, the revolution was already winning. Chapter 7, Furry Infiltration. As the day of the cage match drew nearer, Taylor and her team knew they needed to expand their reach. The emotional awakening couldn't be limited to their small group of rebels. It needed to spread throughout New Harmony. And so, Operation Furry Infiltration was born, a daring plan to bring the liberating power of feline emotion to every corner of the city. Under the cover of night, rebels fanned out across New Harmony, each carrying a specially trained cat equipped with a miniature version of the frequency-neutralizing device. These feline operatives were deployed strategically, in parks, near schools, around government buildings. Anywhere people gathered, a cat would appear, its purr a beacon of emotional freedom in the regulated wasteland. The effects were both profound and unpredictable, rippling through the city like waves in a once still pond. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mother picking up her child from a playdate suddenly burst into tears, overwhelmed by the love she felt for her daughter, an emotion she hadn't truly experienced in years. The two embraced in the middle of the street, their sobs of joy drawing curious and concerned looks from passersby. At a bustling marketplace, a vendor tasting his own wares let out a whoop of joy, startling his customers with a display of unregulated pleasure in the simple act of eating. His enthusiasm proved contagious, and soon the entire market was alive with laughter and excited chatter as people rediscovered the joy of flavors and textures. But perhaps the most significant incident occurred in the heart of the financial district. A high-ranking ERA official, hurrying to an important meeting, paused to pet a seemingly stray cat lounging on a bench. In that moment, as the feline frequency washed over him, years of suppressed guilt came crashing down. He fell to his knees, sobbing, and began confessing to a litany of crimes committed in the name of emotional regulation. The sight of a respected official breaking down in public sent shockwaves through the district. Some fled, terrified by this display of raw emotion. Others, drawn by a curiosity they couldn't name, gathered around, finding themselves moved to tears or laughter by the official's heartfelt words. The ERA, caught off guard by these emotional outbursts, scrambled to respond. They launched a massive anti-pet propaganda campaign, depicting cats as harbingers of societal collapse. Posters appeared overnight, plastered on every available surface. They showed sinister felines with glowing eyes, captioned with slogans like "Cuddles today, chaos tomorrow," and "Purrs destroy productivity." But the campaign had an unintended effect. Citizens, their curiosity piqued by the sudden focus on pets, began seeking out cats, drawn by a long-forgotten longing for companionship. Underground pet shops sprung up, doing a brisk trade in kittens and cat supplies. The sight of people openly carrying cat carriers or wearing cat-themed clothing became a subtle sign of rebellion. As the feline frequency spread, so did the challenges for Taylor and her team. The sudden influx of emotion was overwhelming for many citizens. Support groups formed spontaneously, with people gathering in secret to share their experiences and learn to navigate their rediscovered feelings. These meetings, held in basements and back rooms, became a crucial part of the emotional underground. People who had lived for years in a state of regulated numbness now found themselves grappling with the full spectrum of human emotion. They laughed together, cried together, and slowly began to remember what it meant to be truly alive. Taylor found herself stretched thin, not just preparing for the cage match, but also trying to guide her growing movement. She wrote songs of healing and hope, which were shared in hushed whispers and hummed in the privacy of emotion-free zones. Her music became a lifeline for many, a reminder that they were not alone in their awakening. But the weight of leadership took its toll. There were nights when Taylor, overwhelmed by the intensity of her own emotions, would curl up with whiskers and weep. The cat's steady purr became her anchor, reminding her of why they were fighting. "What if we're wrong?" she asked Emma one night, her voice barely a whisper. The question had been gnawing at her, growing louder as the day of the cage match approached. What if humanity isn't ready for this? Look at all the chaos, the pain. Emma, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and determination, took Taylor's hand. The touch, once so foreign, now felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Look at all the joy, too," she said softly. "The love, the laughter. Yes, it's messy, but it's real, it's human." As they spoke, reports came in of another successful feline infiltration. A cat had managed to sneak into an ERA broadcasting station, its purr temporarily disrupting the emotional suppression signal. For a brief, beautiful moment, an entire sector of New Harmony had experienced true feeling. The incident was quickly contained, the cat captured, though it mysteriously escaped en route to an ERA facility, much to the rebels' relief. But the damage, or the healing, depending on one's perspective, was done. More and more citizens were questioning the regulated life they had accepted for so long. Meanwhile, in the upper echelons of the ERA, JD Vance was becoming increasingly erratic. His fusion with furniture technology had progressed to alarming levels. Meetings were disrupted by sudden outbursts, with Vance alternating between cold, robotic efficiency and bursts of manic, upholstery-related rambling. One particularly disturbing report described Vance's arm transforming into a table lamp during a high-level strategy session. As his subordinates looked on in horror, Vance had continued speaking as if nothing was amiss, the lampshade bobbing with each emphatic gesture. As New Harmony teetered on the brink of emotional revolution, both sides prepared for the showdown that would determine the fate of the city. Taylor Swift, armed with nothing but her rediscovered emotions and a legion of purring allies, versus JD Vance, the furniture-enhanced embodiment of emotional suppression. The cage match loomed, and with it, the promise of a new dawn, or the final twilight of human feeling. The furry infiltration had set the stage, awakening long-dormant emotions in the citizens of New Harmony. Now it all came down to one final confrontation. As Taylor made her final preparations, she looked out over the city she had once known only as a place of regulated contentment. Now she saw it with new eyes, a battlefield where the very essence of humanity was at stake. With whiskers purring at her feet and the sound of distant music drifting through the air, she steeled herself for the fight ahead. The revolution was purring, and soon it would roar. Chapter 8, The Ballad of the Immune Couch. As the city buzzed with anticipation for the upcoming cage match, a new player emerged in the unfolding drama, one that had been hiding in plain sight all along. The true story of JD Vance's beloved couch, the catalyst for the entire emotional upheaval, finally came to light. It began with a chance encounter. Emma, while distributing underground emotional support pamphlets, bumped into an elderly man named Geppetto Pinocchio. The old furniture maker's eyes lit up with a spark of recognition when Emma mentioned the rebellion. "You're with Taylor Swift's group, aren't you?" he whispered, glancing around nervously. His weathered face bore the lines of years lived under emotional suppression, but there was a twinkle in his eye that spoke of long-buried feelings. "I have something you need to know. It's about the couch, Vance's couch." Intrigued, Emma brought Geppetto to their secret base. As Taylor and the core team gathered around, the old man began to tell a tale that seemed almost mythical in its scope. His voice, trembling with age and emotion, filled the room with a story that would change everything they thought they knew about their world. "The couch," Geppetto began, his voice quavering with emotion, "is no ordinary piece of furniture. It was crafted generations ago by my great-great-grandfather from a rare wood found in an ancient forest. This wood, it has properties. It resists the emotional suppression frequencies naturally." The rebels exchanged excited glances. This could explain how Vance had maintained his emotional capacity despite being the architect of the suppression system. It was a revelation that cast their entire struggle in a new light. Geppetto continued, his story unfolding like an epic ballad. He spoke of how the couch had been passed down through generations, witnessing the full spectrum of human emotions. It had cradled newborns and comforted the dying. It had been a silent observer to passionate declarations of love and heated arguments, to quiet moments of contemplation and raucous celebrations. "The couch absorbed it all," Geppetto said, his eyes misty with remembrance. "Every laugh, every tear, every whispered secret, they became part of its very fabric. It's not just a piece of furniture. It's a repository of human experience." As he spoke, the rebels could almost see the scenes he described. Families gathering around the couch, lovers sharing tender moments, children playing and growing. It was a glimpse into a world of rich emotional tapestry that had been lost to them for so long. But as emotional regulation took hold of society, the couch became a dangerous relic. Geppetto's father, fearing for his family's safety, sold it to a wealthy collector, who turned out to be a young, ambitious politician named JD Vance. "I don't think Vance knew what he was getting at first," Geppetto mused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. But over time, as the emotional suppression tightened its grip on the city, the couch became his only connection to true feeling. It was like an addiction. The more he suppressed emotions in others, the more he craved them himself. The revelation stunned the rebels. The very system that Vance had created to control emotions had driven him to form an unhealthy attachment to the one thing that could still make him feel. It was a tragic irony, a testament to the fundamental human need for emotional connection. As Geppetto's tale concluded, the team fell into thoughtful silence. Taylor, her mind racing, began to see the bigger picture. She paced the room, her excitement growing with each step. "Don't you see?" she said, her voice rising with enthusiasm. "This couch, it's not just Vance's weakness. It's proof that emotions can't be fully suppressed, that there's always a way for feelings to break through. It's hope, tangible and real." The implications were staggering. If they could somehow harness the properties of the couch's wood, they might be able to create a citywide defense against the ERA's suppression frequencies. It was a tantalizing possibility, a potential game changer in their fight for emotional freedom. But there was more to the story. As the rebels dug deeper, they uncovered a startling truth. The couch, after years of absorbing human emotions, had developed a consciousness of its own. Reports trickled in of strange occurrences in Vance's private quarters. ERA staffers spoke in hushed tones of hearing muffled conversations when Vance was alone with the couch. Others swore they had seen the furniture move on its own, subtly shifting to provide comfort or withdraw it, depending on Vance's emotional state. Most intriguingly, the rebels began to notice a pattern in furniture store advertisements across the city. Hidden within the banal descriptions of ottomans and love seats were coded messages, offering tantalizing hints about the ERA's emotion-suppressing technology. It's the couch, Emma realized, decoding one particularly complex message hidden in a description of a recliner's upholstery. It's trying to communicate with us. The idea of a sentient piece of furniture might have seemed absurd in the world they once knew. But in this new reality, where cats could awaken emotions and people could merge with chairs, anything seemed possible. As Taylor and her team raced to decipher the couch's clues, they felt a growing sense of hope. The messages hinted at a fatal flaw in the ERA's technology, a weakness that could potentially bring the whole system crashing down. It was as if the couch, imbued with generations of human emotion, was reaching out to help restore feeling to the world. But time was running out. The cage match was just days away, and Vance's merger with furniture technology was reaching terrifying new levels. The fate of New Harmony's emotional future hung in the balance, with an unlikely alliance forming between a pop star, a group of rebels, a legion of cats, and a sentient couch. As Taylor strummed her guitar, composing a new song to rally her followers, she couldn't help but marvel at the strange turns her life had taken. From teen idol to emotional revolutionary, all because of a stray cat and a piece of furniture with a history. The ballad of the immune couch was far from over. Its final verses would be written in the crucible of the upcoming cage match, where the very nature of human emotion would be decided once and for all. As Taylor's fingers danced over the strings, she began to sing softly. In wood and fabric, feelings hide, a couch that stemmed emotions tide. From love to hate, from joy to pain, it holds the key to feel again. The song floated through the rebel bass, a promise of the emotional awakening to come. And somewhere in the city, in Vance's private chambers, an old couch shifted slightly, as if stirring from a long slumber, ready to play its part in the revolution. Chapter 9, Purr-Propaganda Wars. As the day of the cage match drew near, New Harmony became a battleground of competing narratives. The airwaves, billboards, and public spaces were flooded with propaganda from both the ERA and the rebel movement, each side fighting desperately to sway public opinion. The ERA's campaign was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation, or rather, anti-emotional manipulation. Glossy advertisements depicted a peaceful, productive society, its citizens moving through their days with serene efficiency. These images were carefully crafted to reinforce the idea that a life without emotional turmoil was the key to happiness and success. These idyllic scenes were contrasted sharply with images of emotional addicts, actors portraying individuals in the throes of chaotic feelings, their lives in disarray. In one particularly striking ad, a man was shown weeping uncontrollably, unable to go to work or care for his family. The message was clear. Emotions were a destructive force that needed to be contained. One particularly effective ERA commercial showed a before and after scenario. In the before segment, a family argued bitterly, their faces contorted with anger and pain. Children cried, parents shouted, and the home was in chaos. The after scene depicted the same family, now calm and content, enjoying a quiet evening together. They moved in perfect harmony, their faces serene and unburdened. The tagline read, "Emotional regulation for the good of all." But Taylor and her rebels were not without their own powerful messaging. Underground concerts became a form of emotional contraband, with bootleg recordings spreading like wildfire through the city. These performances were raw, cathartic experiences that left attendees shaken to their core. At one such concert, held in an abandoned subway tunnel, Taylor debuted a new song called Feel Again. As her voice soared through the makeshift venue, many in the audience wept openly, overwhelmed by the rush of long-suppressed emotions. The lyrics spoke of rediscovery, of the beauty found in both joy and sorrow. Remember when our hearts could soar? When tears could fall and joy could roar? They tried to numb us, make us still, but they can't break our will to feel. The chorus became an anthem for the rebellion, hummed quietly in workplaces and scrawled as graffiti on city walls. It was a reminder that beneath the veneer of regulated contentment, the human spirit still yearned for genuine emotion. The rebels also employed more direct tactics. Hackers infiltrated the ERA's broadcast systems, interrupting official programming with footage of genuine human moments: a child's first steps, lovers sharing a passionate kiss, friends laughing together over a shared joke. These brief glimpses of authentic emotion were like sparks in the darkness, igniting long-dormant feelings in viewers across the city. One particularly powerful hack replaced a standard ERA relaxation broadcast with footage of a pre-regulation concert. The sight of thousands of people moving as one, their faces alive with joy and excitement, was a stark contrast to the regulated gatherings of New Harmony. For many viewers, it was a shocking reminder of what they had lost. As the propaganda war escalated, JD Vance became an increasingly visible and unsettling presence in ERA messaging. He appeared in a series of televised interviews, his demeanor unnervingly calm as he extolled the virtues of emotional regulation. But observant viewers noticed something off about Vance's appearance. His suit seemed to shift and ripple in strange ways, and at times his limbs appeared unnaturally elongated or jointed. It was as if the furniture he had merged with was struggling to maintain a human form. In one notorious incident, during a live broadcast, Vance's arm suddenly transformed into what looked like a table leg. The feed was quickly cut, but not before millions of viewers witnessed the disturbing transformation. The ERA tried to play it off as a technical glitch, but the damage was done. Rumors about Vance's true nature spread rapidly. Taylor and her team seized on this opportunity. They released a series of satirical ads featuring furniture with faces, asking questions like, "Do you want a recliner running your life?" And "Is your sofa qualified to make emotional decisions for you?" One particularly memorable Rebel ad showed a smiling family sitting on a couch with the tagline, "Some things are meant to support you, not control you." The image was a powerful counterpoint to the ERA's sterile depictions of regulated life. The humor resonated with citizens who were growing increasingly skeptical of the ERA's control. Laughter, after all, was an emotion many had sorely missed. The ads became a topic of hushed conversation, with people sharing their favorite jokes and slogans. As the propaganda war raged, the emotional temperature of New Harmony rose steadily. Citizens who had lived for years in a state of muted contentment found themselves experiencing flashes of genuine feeling: anger at being manipulated, fear of the unknown, and a growing excitement about the possibility of change. The cage match was no longer just a contest between Taylor Swift and JD Vance. It had become a symbolic battle for the very soul of the city. Would New Harmony choose the safe, regulated existence it had known for so long? Or would it embrace the beautiful, terrifying chaos of genuine human emotion? As the final hours ticked down, both sides poured everything they had into one last push. The ERA plastered the city with posters showing Taylor as a wild-eyed harbinger of chaos, her hair disheveled and her expression manic. The tagline read, "Is this the future you want for New Harmony?" The rebels countered with images of smiling cats, their eyes twinkling with the promise of emotional freedom. These posters bore simple messages like, "Permission to feel," and "The revolution is meow." The whimsical approach struck a chord with many citizens, offering a gentle invitation to a more emotionally rich life. In her hidden bass, Taylor strummed her guitar softly, composing one last song for the battle ahead. Whiskers purred at her feet, a reminder of how this all began. The music flowed from her fingers, a melody that spoke of hope, of defiance, of the indomitable human spirit. As she sang, Taylor thought of all that had led to this moment: the chance encounter with Whiskers, the underground concerts, the furry infiltration, the ballad of the immune couch. Each step had brought them closer to this final confrontation, this chance to reclaim their right to feel. Whatever the outcome of the cage match, she knew that the first notes of change had already been struck. The symphony of human emotion, so long silenced, was poised to play once more. And as New Harmony held its collective breath, Taylor Swift prepared to step into the arena and fight for the very soul of humanity. The stage was set, the players were in position, and as the sun set on the eve of the cage match, the city hummed with an energy it hadn't known in years, the electric anticipation of impending change. Chapter 10, Frequency Fractures. The day before the cage match, New Harmony woke to a city on edge. The careful balance of emotional suppression maintained for so long by the ERA's technology was beginning to crumble. Like hairline cracks spreading across a dam, the first signs of the system's failure appeared in seemingly random locations throughout the city. It started small, a burst of laughter in a normally silent park, a sob echoing through the sterile halls of a corporate office. But as the hours ticked by, these emotional outbursts grew in frequency and intensity, spreading like wildfire through the carefully regulated populace. In the financial district, a stock trader suddenly leapt onto his desk, his face flushed with an excitement he couldn't explain. "I love this job," he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "I love numbers. I love money." His colleagues stared in shock, some backing away in fear, others feeling an unfamiliar stirring in their own chests. At a quiet cafe, two strangers locked eyes over their regulation-approved nutrient shakes. In an instant, years of suppressed attraction and longing burst forth. They fell into a passionate embrace, knocking over tables and chairs, oblivious to the startled gasps of those around them. The sight of such raw emotion was both terrifying and oddly compelling to the onlookers. The ERA scrambled to respond, dispatching teams of mood monitors to trouble spots across the city. But it was like trying to plug a leaking ship with their bare hands. For every emotional outbreak they contained, 3 more sprang up elsewhere. The monitors, trained to maintain emotional neutrality, found themselves overwhelmed by the intensity of the feelings they encountered. Citizens reacted to this emotional chaos in wildly different ways. Some, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of feeling, curled up in corners, rocking back and forth as they tried to process years of pent-up emotions. Tears flowed freely, accompanied by laughter, shouts of joy, and cries of long-suppressed pain. Others threw themselves into the experience with abandon, running through the streets, laughing, crying, and shouting their long-suppressed truths to anyone who would listen. Confessions of secret loves, long-held grudges, and buried dreams filled the air, a cacophony of human emotion that had been silenced for far too long. A group of office workers, freed from their emotional shackles, spontaneously organized a dance party in the middle of a busy intersection. As they twirled and swayed to imaginary music, years of repressed joy bubbling to the surface, traffic ground to a halt. Drivers, rather than being annoyed, joined in, honking their horns in rhythm and dancing alongside their vehicles. The street became a surreal scene of celebration, a stark contrast to the usual orderly flow of regulated life. But not all reactions were joyous. Years of suppressed anger and resentment also found release. Arguments erupted on street corners, old grudges suddenly remembered and acted upon. In one neighborhood, a long simmering dispute over a misplaced garbage can escalated into a full-scale brawl, with residents hurling emotional invectives along with their fists. Through it all, Taylor Swift's popularity soared among the emotionally awakened. Her music, once dismissed as a relic of a more chaotic time, now resonated deeply with those experiencing real feelings for the first time in years. Underground listening parties sprang up across the city, with people gathering in basements and back rooms to experience the catharsis of her lyrics. One of Taylor's old hits, "Shake It Off," became an unlikely anthem for the emotional revolution. Its message of resilience and self-expression in the face of criticism struck a chord with citizens struggling to navigate their newfound feelings. The chorus could be heard echoing through the streets, sung by voices rough with disuse but filled with growing confidence. 'Cause the player's gonna play, 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 and the hater's gonna hate, 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 hate. Baby, I'm just gonna shake, 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 shake. I shake it off. I shake it off. As the emotional floodgates opened wider, the ERA's desperation grew. Their engineers worked frantically to patch the system, resorting to increasingly dangerous and unstable frequencies in an attempt to regain control. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the intensity of their efforts, creating a low-level hum that set teeth on edge and exacerbated the growing emotional instability. Reports began to emerge of furniture coming to life in frequency dead zones, hinting at a deeper connection between emotions and the physical world. Chairs danced with their occupants, tables flipped in anger, and in one particularly surreal incident, an entire living room set was seen marching down the street, apparently in search of its long-lost ottoman. JD Vance, his control slipping, became more erratic with each passing hour. His public appearances grew stranger and more unsettling. During one emergency broadcast, viewers were horrified to see that half of Vance's face had transformed into polished mahogany, his left eye replaced by a brass drawer pull. In a last-ditch effort to stem the tide of emotion, the ERA announced a citywide lockdown. Citizens were ordered to remain in their homes where the emotional suppression frequencies were strongest. But for many, it was too late. The taste of freedom, of genuine feeling, was too sweet to give up. As night fell on the eve of the cage match, New Harmony was a city transformed. The air crackled with energy, with fear and hope and 1,000 other emotions that had no name after years of suppression. In homes and hideaways across the city, people held their breath, wondering what the new day would bring. In her secret base, Taylor Swift prepared for the fight of her life. She knew that tomorrow's battle would be about more than just physical combat. It would be a struggle for the very soul of New Harmony, a chance to prove that humanity was stronger with its emotions than without them. As she drifted off to sleep, whiskers curled up beside her, Taylor's last thought was of the millions of people counting on her. Win or lose, she vowed, tomorrow would mark the beginning of a new era for New Harmony. An era of feeling, of living, of being truly human once again. The stage was set, the city was primed, and as the first light of dawn broke over New Harmony, the day of reckoning had finally arrived. Chapter 11, The Eve of Battle. The morning of the cage match dawned with an eerie stillness over New Harmony. The usual hum of the city's emotional suppression frequencies was noticeably absent, replaced by a tense silence that seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the coming confrontation. In her hidden base, Taylor Swift rose early, her nerves jangling with a mixture of fear and determination. As she went through her final preparations, her team bustled around her, a whirlwind of activity and barely contained emotion. Emma approached, holding a small device. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Our best shot at broadcasting the feline frequency globally during the fight. We've miniaturized the technology as much as we could." Taylor took the device, marveling at how something so small could hold the key to their revolution. She carefully tucked it into a hidden pocket in her fighting outfit, a sleek bodysuit designed to withstand Vance's furniture-enhanced attacks while allowing for maximum mobility. Across the city, in the ERA headquarters, JD Vance was undergoing his own preparations. His transformation had progressed to alarming levels, his body now a grotesque fusion of flesh and furniture. As his scientists made final adjustments to his enhancements, Vance outlined his ultimate plan. "The cage match is more than just a fight," he declared, his voice resonating with an unnatural timbre. "It's a conduit. When I defeat Swift, I will unleash an amplified emotional suppression wave that will blanket not just New Harmony, but the entire world. We will usher in a new era of perfect global contentment." His lead scientist, Dr. Stone, looked alarmed. "Sir, the potential side effects of such a powerful wave are unknown. We haven't had time to run proper tests. The consequences could be catastrophic." Vance, now more couch than man, dismissed her concerns with a wave of his upholstered arm. "The only catastrophe would be allowing chaos to reign. We must do this, for the good of all humanity." As the hour of the match approached, citizens of New Harmony gathered around view screens or made their way to the arena itself. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a potent mixture of fear, excitement, and hope, emotions that many were experiencing for the first time in years. In secret locations throughout the city, Taylor's rebel team made final preparations to broadcast their counter-frequency. They faced a major setback when their primary transmission cat, a seasoned veteran of the emotional revolution, fell ill at the last moment. In a desperate move, they were forced to train a rookie kitten for the job, hoping its youthful energy would make up for its lack of experience. As Taylor made her way to the arena, flanked by a security detail of loyal rebels, she was struck by the changes in the city. Everywhere she looked, she saw signs of emotional awakening. People walked with a new spring in their step, their faces alive with expression. Couples held hands openly, children laughed and played without restraint, and even the buildings seemed somehow more vibrant, as if the very architecture of New Harmony was shaking off years of emotional rust. But there was fear, too. The unknown loomed large, and many citizens, while intrigued by their newfound feelings, were also terrified by their intensity. Taylor knew that her fight wasn't just against Vance and the ERA, but against the very human instinct to retreat from the complexities of emotional life. As night fell, both sides held candlelit vigils. In the sterile halls of the ERA, employees gathered to pray for the return of order and the calm predictability of regulated life. In secret corners and hidden rooms across the city, rebels and sympathizers lit candles for the dawn of a new, feeling world. Taylor spent her final hours before the match in quiet reflection. She sat with Whiskers, drawing strength from the cat's steady purr, and thought about everything that had led her to this moment. She remembered the hollow emptiness of her regulated life, the spark of awakening that came with Whiskers' touch, and all the joy, pain, and wonder she had experienced since. Taking out her guitar, Taylor began to strum softly, letting a melody form organically from the tumult of her emotions. As the song took shape, she realized it was both a battle cry and a lullaby, a testament to the beautiful complexity of the human heart. As the first light of dawn broke over New Harmony, Taylor Swift stood ready to face her destiny. In one hand, she held the tiny device that could free the city from emotional suppression. In her heart, she carried the hopes and dreams of countless citizens yearning to feel again. The cage match was about to begin, and with it, the final battle for the soul of New Harmony. As Taylor took her first steps towards the arena, she whispered a quiet promise to herself and to the city she had come to love. Today we feel again, today we live again, today we become human again. The revolution was no longer coming. It had arrived. Chapter 12, Clause and Contracts. The New Harmony Arena, once a place of regulated entertainment, now thrummed with an energy it had never known. As Taylor Swift entered, the crowd's reaction was anything but controlled. A wave of sound, cheers, gasps, sobs washed over her, a cacophony of raw emotion that nearly brought her to her knees. The arena itself was a marvel of ERA engineering, designed to amplify the emotional suppression frequencies to their maximum potency. But today, it would serve as the battleground for humanity's emotional future. Taylor took her place in the cage, her heart racing, but her resolve firm. She glanced at the hidden pocket containing the Feline Frequency device, hoping against hope that it would work when the time came. A hush fell over the arena as JD Vance made his entrance. The gasps that greeted his appearance were tinged with horror rather than awe. Vance was barely recognizable as human. His body had become a nightmarish fusion of man and furniture, his limbs elongated and jointed like chair legs, his torso broad and flat like a tabletop. His face, half flesh and half wood, wore an expression of cold determination. As Vance entered the cage, Taylor could feel the oppressive weight of the ERA's frequencies pressing down on her. She gritted her teeth, fighting to hold on to her emotions, to remember why she was here. The referee, a blank-faced ERA official, began to recite the rules in a monotone voice. But before he could finish, Vance interrupted. "Enough formalities," he growled, his voice resonating with an unnatural timbre. "Let's end this farce and bring peace back to our city." With that, he lunged at Taylor, his furniture-enhanced form moving with impossible speed and strength. Taylor dodged, barely avoiding a blow that left a dent in the cage wall. As the fight began in earnest, Taylor's rebels sprang into action. Hidden throughout the arena and the city, they worked frantically to override the ERA's broadcast with the Feline Frequency. But the ERA's jamming signals were strong, and progress was frustratingly slow. In the cage, Taylor found herself on the defensive. Her months of training had prepared her for a tough fight, but Vance's furniture enhancements made him a formidable opponent. His arms extended and retracted at will, striking from unexpected angles. His wooden components seemed impervious to pain, allowing him to shrug off blows that would have felled a normal human. But Taylor had something Vance didn't, genuine emotion fueling her every move. As she ducked and weaved, she thought of all the people counting on her, of the joy and pain and love she had rediscovered. With each punch she threw, she put not just her physical strength behind it, but the full force of her reawakened heart. Outside the arena, New Harmony held its breath. The match was being broadcast on every available screen, and citizens watched with a mix of fear and fascination. In homes and offices, on street corners, and in underground bunkers, people found themselves doing something they hadn't done in years. They began to take sides, to hope, to care about the outcome. As the fight wore on, both Taylor and Vance began to show signs of fatigue. Taylor's body was battered, bruises blooming across her skin. Vance's furniture components creaked and groaned, the unnatural fusion of organic and inorganic beginning to strain under the pressure of combat. In a moment of desperation, Taylor reached for the hidden device, ready to activate it and flood the arena with the feline frequency. But as her fingers closed around it, Vance landed a powerful blow, sending her crashing into the cage wall. The device slipped from her grasp, skittering across the floor of the cage. Taylor lunged for it, but Vance was quicker. His elongated arm shot out, fingers wrapping around the small device. With a triumphant snarl, he crushed it in his grip. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Vance sneered, his voice a mixture of human arrogance and inhuman resonance. "Your little revolution ends here, Swift. It's time to bring true peace back to New Harmony." As Taylor stared at the broken remains of their last hope, a wave of despair threatened to overwhelm her. Had they come so far, only to fail at the final hurdle? But then, just as all seemed lost, a sound cut through the chaos of the arena. A sound so simple, so ordinary, that at first Taylor thought she was imagining it. It was a purr. Whiskers, the cat that had started it all, had somehow found his way into the arena, and he wasn't alone. Dozens, then hundreds of cats began to appear, slipping through vents, squeezing past security, their combined purrs growing into a resonant frequency that made the very air vibrate. The feline army had arrived, and with them, the tide of the battle was about to turn. As the purrs grew louder, drowning out the ERA's suppression frequencies, Taylor felt a surge of renewed strength. She rose to her feet, facing Vance with a determination that burned brighter than ever. "You're wrong, Vance," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the cacophony around them. "The revolution doesn't end here. It's only just beginning." With that, Taylor Swift launched herself back into the fight, the sound of 1,000 purrs propelling her forward. The final battle for the soul of New Harmony raged on, its outcome still uncertain, but hope now burned brighter than ever before. The claws were out. The contracts of emotional suppression were being shredded, and the true nature of humanity was about to be decided once and for all. Chapter 13, Sonic Showdown. As the combined purrs of the feline army reverberated through the arena, the effects were immediate and profound. The ERA's carefully calibrated emotional suppression frequencies began to falter, creating pockets of emotional freedom that spread like wildfire through the crowd. In the stands, people who had come to watch with blank expressions suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by long-suppressed feelings. Tears flowed freely, laughter erupted spontaneously, and years of pent-up emotions burst forth in a cathartic explosion. On the arena floor, the cats wove between the legs of security guards, their purrs creating a protective bubble around Taylor. She felt her strength returning, her resolve hardening. With each breath, she drew in not just air, but the raw, unfiltered emotions that now permeated the atmosphere. Vance, however, was not going down without a fight. As the feline frequency intensified, his furniture enhancements began to malfunction. His wooden components creaked and splintered, and his movements became jerky and unpredictable. But rather than weaken him, this seemed to drive him to new heights of frenzy. "You think your cats can stop progress?" he roared, his voice distorting as his human and furniture aspects warred for control. "I am the future, a perfect fusion of man and regulation." He lunged at Taylor, his arm extending like a telescoping table leg. But Taylor, energized by the emotional atmosphere, was ready. She ducked under the blow and countered with a flurry of punches, each one backed by a different emotion: joy, anger, love, fear, all the feelings she had rediscovered and embraced. As the battle raged on, the rebels outside the arena made a breakthrough. They managed to hijack the citywide broadcast system, replacing the ERA's suppression signal with the amplified purrs of the cats. Across New Harmony, the emotional floodgates burst open. In homes and offices, on streets and in parks, people felt the full force of their emotions for the first time in years. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and utterly exhilarating. Citizens laughed and cried, hugged strangers, and danced in the streets. Years of repressed feelings poured out in a tidal wave of human expression. Back in the arena, the emotional awakening of the crowd reached a fever pitch. Their cheers, sobs, and shouts of encouragement became a symphony of feeling that washed over the combatants in the cage. Taylor, drawing strength from this outpouring of emotion, pressed her advantage. She moved with a grace and power she had never known before, each strike and dodge infused with the full spectrum of human feeling. Vance, on the other hand, was struggling. The Feline Frequency was playing havoc with his furniture enhancements. Pieces of him were literally coming apart, a chair leg here, a drawer handle there. His movements became more erratic, his attacks wilder and less controlled. In a desperate move, Vance attempted to activate his ultimate weapon, the global emotional suppression wave. He raised his arms, now more like antennae than limbs, and began to emit a high-pitched whine that cut through even the sound of the purring cats. For a moment, it seemed as if he might succeed. The emotional energy in the arena faltered, and a wave of numbness began to spread outward from Vance. But then, in a twist that no one could have predicted, Whiskers, the cat that had started it all, leapt into the cage. With a yowl that seemed to contain all the defiance and spirit of feline kind, Whiskers launched himself directly at Vance. The cat's impact, combined with the concentrated feline frequency emanating from his small body, was the final straw. Vance's fragile balance between man and furniture shattered. With a sound like 1,000 tables being smashed at once, he literally fell to pieces. As Vance collapsed into a heap of splintered wood and twisted metal, the arena erupted in a roar that contained every human emotion imaginable. Joy, relief, shock, and 100 other feelings mingled in a cathartic explosion of sound. Taylor, bruised and battered but triumphant, scooped up Whiskers and held him high. The cat's purr, amplified by the arena's acoustics, washed over the crowd in a wave of pure, emotionally liberating sound. In that moment, as thousands of awakened citizens cheered and wept and embraced, the ERA's hold on New Harmony was well and truly broken. The symphony of human emotion, so long silenced, had finally been allowed to play its full, beautiful, chaotic melody. Outside the arena, the city was transforming. The drab, uniform architecture began to change, as if responding to the newfound emotions of its inhabitants. Buildings seemed to stretch and shift, taking on more organic, expressive forms. Colors appeared where there had only been shades of gray, as if the very essence of New Harmony was coming alive. In the aftermath of the battle, Taylor found herself at the center of a joyous, emotional whirlwind. People reached out to touch her, to thank her, their faces alive with feeling. She saw tears and smiles, heard laughter and sobs, felt the electric energy of a populace reborn. As the dust settled, Taylor knew that their work was far from over. Learning to live with emotions after years of suppression would be a challenge. There would be struggles ahead as people navigated the complexities of feeling. But as she looked out over the sea of awakened faces, she knew it was a challenge worth facing. In the days that followed, New Harmony began the process of rebuilding, not just its physical structures, but the very fabric of its society. The ERA headquarters was transformed into a center for emotional wellness, helping citizens cope with their newfound feelings. Music and art flourished as people rediscovered the joy of creative expression. And what of JD Vance? In a final, ironic twist, the fragments of his furniture-enhanced body were gathered and reformed into a park bench. Placed in the center of the city, it became a symbol of the dangers of emotional suppression and the importance of embracing our full humanity. As for Taylor Swift, she found herself in a new role, no longer a rebel leader, but a guide for a society learning to feel again. Her music, once forbidden, now played freely throughout New Harmony, a soundtrack to the city's emotional reawakening. In the end, it was Whiskers who perhaps summed it up best. As Taylor sat on a hillside overlooking the transformed city, the cat curled up in her lap, purring contentedly. In that simple sound was a profound truth, that in embracing our emotions, in all their messy, complicated glory, we find our truest selves. The Feline Frequency had done more than overthrow a regime. It had reminded an entire city of what it meant to be human. And as the sun set on a New Harmony alive with feeling, Taylor Swift strummed her guitar and began to sing, her voice carrying a promise of a future where every heart was free to feel. The end.